Okay, so oh my God, is it visible?
No, sir.
Oh, okay, okay. Just a second. I think I removed it. Now is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So in the last class, what we discussed was just a second. Okay. So in the last class, we discussed uh, this thing, right? The classification thing, and what we were doing is we were discussing perceptron algorithm, and in that perceptron algorithm, we were on the last slide where we discussed that the perceptron algorithm result is not unique, and the non-uniqueness was coming because of the type of the cost function that we are actually trying to minimize. So the cost function is something like this. So it's a convex function, but it has number of number of global minima. So you have, there are number of them, and all of them are global. So at any point where you start, depending upon the initialization of your algorithm, it can, halt at any point on this on this particular surface. So because of that, you have, multiple such lines which are possible. So if you initialize your algorithm somewhere here, then it might be the case that this particular line after multiple iterations will, converge to this line, or it might be possible that if your algorithm initialize from this side, then after convergence it will, end up on this line or on this line, depending upon where your initialization of the algorithm starts. So out of these all, possible hyperplanes that perceptron algorithm can generate, last time, I think you all agree that this is the one which is actually the one of the most suitable one, which is the best among all of them. And the reason for, choosing this one as one of the best is because of the margin that it has created from the nearest sample that you are observing. So, like, you are actually, just a second. You are some way or the other in your mind. What is happening is this particular hyperplane. You are actually setting up a margin in your mind, which is actually, giving you a distance from the closest sample in this particular data set. And you are,
Sir,
yes,
sir, one thing I wanted to ask, like since it has a lot of global minimas,
yeah.
and if we instead of looking at this margin thing, if we look at the this global minima graph that you plotted beside, so is it really depending on the space or the point where we are initializing, or is it will depend on the alpha, the learning rate? Because if it is like having a big strides, then it may end up somewhere in the middle.
No,
As
they see the alpha thing. You are, that will come into play when you have some gradient in somewhere or the other. Like, if there is a gradient, let us say you are operating here, then your alpha will come into play because you have, alpha times the gradient of the cost function with respect to the theta. But when you are somewhere near this point, right? If you are somewhere here, the gradient is all zero. So there is no gradient at all here at this particular point. So even if you increase alpha to large value, it will not, affect the system too much, because this point will not move at all. It will move very slowly because the gradient at this particular, part of the convex function is almost close to zero. So if you increase the alpha to a very large value, then also, it will move very slowly. So that's why, some way or the other, you will be somewhere nearby to this point only, and it will not go close the to the point where, this hyperplane is generated. Is it clear now?
yes, sir.
Okay. So so some way or the other, this hyperplane that you have here, you are actually setting up in your mind that this is the best hyperplane because you are actually creating a distance from this line to the to the point which is very close to the line, and you are creating a distance in your mind which is to the point which is closest to this data set. So, so this is the line selected because you are actually maximizing the margin here. So that is what we are discussing today, which is the concept of margin. So what margin is doing is you are actually setting up a line in your mind, which and you want to maximize it. So this is the line which has a maximum margin because it's equal from this side also and from this side also. Whereas this particular hyperplane, if you see, it has a very small margin from here, but it has a very big margin from this side. So it's completely, unequal in distribution. So this is not selected because of that reason. So the concept that we will be discussing today, which we are calling as support vector machine, this is the algorithm that we are discussing today. So to setting up the stage for this support vector machine, what we are saying is this particular algorithm works on the maximization of the margin, which actually gives you a best supporting hyperplane. So if you have any questions here regarding this particular talk which I have just discussed, let me know, otherwise I will move forward. Okay. So this also we have discussed last time, the pros and cons of the perceptron algorithm. And what are they? That is the perceptron is one of the simple algorithms that you find in the machine learning literature. And the thing is, it has a guaranteed performance if the two classes are linearly separable. This we have already discussed. And if the classes are not linearly separable, we discussed that also, that the perceptron boundary will keep on oscillating between the two classes, and you will not get the result. So even if the data set is non-linearly separable, and if you apply a perceptron algorithm, you will not get the results. The ideal W and the bias B you will not get for that particular hyperplane. So you will not get any results. So the thing is, it will always oscillate. And the second, we have already discussed just now, that the decision boundary is not unique at all. And the decision boundary is not unique, and it is sometimes always touching one of the data points, which causes problem in the robustness. This is also we have discussed. That is, if your hyperplane here is touching one of the points, then it might be the case, because of the noise, it can move to this side of the this side to this side, and this side actually belongs to the plus data set. So whatever you have here, which is minus data set, or the labels having minus here, will become plus if the noise is entered into this particular data set, which is shown over here. So this is what is shown over discussed in this point. That is, the robustness is a problem if the boundary is touching one of the data points. So how to actually solve this problem? So how to solve this problem is, we want to maximize the margin. So as I discussed, we want to maximize this particular margin that this particular hyperplane is creating. So if you see here, we have two different decision boundaries generated by the support vector machine. So right now I am not discussing anything in detail, but I am just showing you the results that are produced by support vector machine. Later on we will go into the details of this particular algorithm. But can you tell me, by looking into these two figures, which one is the best one?
Second.
Second one.
Yeah, second one is the best one, and the reason is quite obvious, because I have already discussed the data sets are same. See, in both the cases, if you see the distribution of the data set, it is same. So all these points which are over here are are similarly located this side also. So there is no change in the data set distribution. But you see one thing here, in this case, your margin, one of the margin is this one, and the another one you can create this one as the margin. So in both these situations, as you can see, in the first case the margin is this much, and in the second case the margin is this much. So you obviously, it can be seen that the margin that you are creating in this case is larger than the margin that you have in this case. So this is the best choice, and we want to we want to work on support vector machine algorithms to actually generate this type of decision boundary, so that the points should be, you know, so that the points which are at the boundary of the both the data sets should be as far as possible from this particular hyperplane. So our objective is to maximize this margin. So let us move forward and see how to, how to come up with the mathematical forms which can help us in doing the maximization of the margin. Okay, so there are some questions that we have to ask regarding this problem setting, and the question that we are asking here is that there are three sub questions. We will discuss these three sub questions, in the subsequent class from today, and in the next class also. And the questions are that how to measure the distance from a point to a plane. Suppose you have this point, right? So I want to measure the distance between this point and the plane, and this point and the plane, this point and the plane. Because once we are able to calculate it, like the distance, then only we can quantify the margin. And because if we do not know how to calculate the distance of a point from the plane, then there is no point in, then we cannot calculate the margin thing. So this is the first question, that is how to measure the distance from a point to a plane. Second question that we have to answer is how to formulate a maximum margin problem. This is the second question. And why we want to maximize, as we have discussed already. So this maximization problem of the margin has to be, formulated in mathematics, in mathematical way. So we want to do that. We want to see how we can formulate this maximum margin in a mathematical form, so that we can get some results out. So that is what it's written over here, that how to formulate the max margin problem. And the third one is quite obvious, once you formulate it, how to solve it. So this solution of the problem that we will be posing will give you the results of support vector machine algorithm. So let us discuss each of these 3 points in detail, and then once you reach the third point, you will be confident in understanding what support vector machines are. So so in order to answer the first question, which is how to measure the distance from a point to a plane, there are two theorems that we will study, theorem 1 and theorem 2. So let us understand these two theorems, and then we can answer this particular question which is given over here. So what is the first theorem? The first theorem that we have is, let g theta be the linear discriminant function. Let g theta be the linear discriminant function, and let h is the hyperplane which actually separates the two classes, and the hyperplane is in such a way that all the points which are there on the hyperplane, which are denoted by x, are in such a way that the gx is 0. So if you see this, this is not too much, it's not that difficult to understand. What it means is, you have a discriminant function. So I am taking a higher dimensional situation where, the line is changed into a form of a plane. So this is basically a hyperplane where all the points x which are lying on this hyperplane satisfies this particular constraint, where it is given as gx is equal to 0, and gx is nothing but it's theta transpose xi plus theta 0. So this is the equation of the plane in higher dimensional. So we specifically saying that, the points x which actually lie on this plane are basically the hyperplane h, denoted by this particular thing h. So it is the separating hyperplane. So there are actually two theorems that we have to prove. The first theorem is given here, which says that this particular vector which is given by theta divided by the L2 norm of theta, actually this is the normal vector. It is the normal vector onto the plane h, separating hyperplane h. For the theorem that we have to prove is that this is your separating hyperplane, and what we have to prove is the normal to this plane, the normal vector to this plane is basically given by theta divided by this. This is what we have to prove. And the second theorem says that for any value of x0, the distance between the x0 and the hyperplane is given by this. So this is your second theorem, which says that if you have a hyperplane which is given here, and this is your normal vector, which we will prove now, then if you want to calculate a point, let us say here we have a point which is called as x0, let us say. So we want to calculate the distance of this point from this hyperplane. So what we are saying in this theorem is that this distance that we have of a point from the hyperplane is given by d of x0 comma h. So this is the form that we want to prove here. So any questions here regarding this particular thing? Any doubts?
Sir, what is it? Theta t x1 minus x2 is equal to 0?
This one you are saying?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, this will I will prove this in the next equation,
Okay,
so
okay,
you'll get it
yeah.
to know. So these are the two theorems that we have to prove before starting the discussion of support vector machine, because some way or the other it will be used in the derivation of the support vector machine. So let us understand the first proof. So in the first proof, as we are considering 2 points x1 and x2, see here we are considering 2 points which are lying on the hyperplane. So we are saying that this is the hyperplane H, and these are the 2 points which are lying on the hyperplane. So since both the points are actually on the hyperplane, then what we can do is we can substitute these points into the equation of the hyperplane and set it to 0, because they are lying on the hyperplane. So once we do that, and you know that g theta is basically given by theta transpose xi plus theta 0. So this is the equation of the hyperplane. So you know that the value of this is equal to 0 if the points xi lie on the hyperplane, and if they do not lie on the hyperplane, then the value will not be 0. So we are saying that 2 points x1 x2 are on the hyperplane. So let's put that values here in this and this argument and equate it to 0. So if you equate it to 0, you will get this equation, as simple as that. The only thing is x1 will be here, and if you equate x2 here in the hyperplane, then you will get x2 inside this one. So you will have these two equations. One is this equation, and the second one is this equation, and both of them are equal to 0. So let's equate them together. So once you do this, from these two equations you can easily write this equation, because both of them are equal to 0. So once you can do that, but after manipulation, what you will get is this. So once you have this, can you tell me, on basis of this, how can we say that the theta is normal to x1 minus x2? So you have this point as x1, and this point is x2. So there is a vector which is connected between the two, because it's a difference between x1 and x2, and the vector theta transpose, and there is another vector theta. Once you take theta transpose of x1 minus x2, the value is 0. Then what can you say about the vector theta based on this condition?
Sir, both are also normal to each other.
Yes. So once this condition is true, that means they are orthogonal to each other. So once they are orthogonal to each other, this means your theta vector is actually creating it's like this. So this is your theta vector. So this proves that your theta is actually orthogonal to the plane. So this is your normal vector, which is orthogonal to the surface H, and if you normalize it with the L2 norm, it will give you a unit vector, because L2 norm is nothing but like this. This is basically your L2 norm. So you must have studied in coordinate geometry also. Once you divide the vector by the modulus of that vector, then you will get a unit vector out. So Here it can be seen that theta is the normal vector, but once you divide it by the modulus, you will get the unit vector, which is normal to the plane. Just scaling of the value.
Sir, I
Yeah.
have one question.
Yeah.
So, in the previous page, there was g theta. I remember it that was the plane, right?
Yes. Yes. It's a plane.
Hyperplane.
Yeah.
So, sir, that theta t x plus theta 0, how that came? I might have slipped it.
So this actually
I
is
mean,
coming from our earlier discussions which we were doing. This is the same equation of the linear regression thing that we were doing last time, right?
okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is
Now,
coming from there.
yes.
Okay.
Oh, got it, got it, got it.
So
Yeah,
the thing
got
is,
it.
the only difference is, earlier I used to write, let us say this one. So what I did is I divided it into two parts. I kept it like this. So I removed the bias term from here and kept it separate. So theta 0 is separate now. So that the matrix which we had, we had ones here and then we had this thing, right? So this separate one I am keeping separate and keeping it as theta 0, separate bias term. So this is same as this
Right.
if you incorporate theta 0 into the theta. That is the thing. Okay, so this is the normal vector which I am showing here, and it's a unit vector. So first theorem is proved. Now we will prove the second theorem, which is that if you have a point here and if you want to calculate the distance of this point from this plane, then what is the value of this distance? So this is shown over here. So what we will do is we will do some steps to do it. So the first point is we pick up a point xp on the hyperplane. This is your point xp, which is on the hyperplane. So what is this second thing? So xp is basically the closest point and it's a orthogonal projection onto the x0. So basically what we are doing is we are actually projecting x0 onto the plane, and that value is xp, and this projection is orthogonal because orthogonal projection is the shortest projection that you can get. Because if you try to do something else like this, all these projections onto the plane will be of larger magnitude. We want the we want distance to be the shortest one, so we want to calculate shortest distance. So that's why the shortest distance will be the orthogonal distance of the point from the plane. So this is what we have to measure. So now, as you know, that this particular distance is the orthogonal distance, and we also know that this particular vector is also orthogonal to the surface hyperplane H. So let's calculate this distance in the same direction as the direction of the normal vector. So if we want to calculate that, what you can do is you can write x0 minus xp. So this is the vector that is connecting between x0 and xp. So that vector will be given by beta times theta of modulus. So what we are saying is we want to scale by a factor of beta this unit vector, because we are moving in the direction of the unit vector. So what we are saying is let's scale it by a factor of beta, and the direction should be the same as the unit vector. So this is what we are writing over here. So now what happens is, as you know that this xp lies on the hyperplane. So if xp lies on the hyperplane, you can use this equation which we are already using, that is g theta x of p. So once you put this xp into the hyperplane equation, what you will get is this. As simple as that. As simple as that. What you are doing is you are just putting xp here, and everything is 0. Now what we want to write is we want to put the value of x0 now onto the hyperplane equation. So if I want to write the hyperplane equation with x0 here, then this will be the equation. So will it be equal to 0 or not? This particular thing. How many of you say it will be 0? How many of you say it will not be 0?
Sir, if x0 is there, I guess it will be 0, but xp, it won't be.
No,
I
but
don't think so. It will be 0.
no, but what you are saying is the other way around. You are saying like if x0 is there, will it be 0 or not? It's as simple as that because x0 is not lying onto the hyperplane. So if x0 is not
Oh,
lying on the
then it won't
hyperplane,
be.
so it will not be equal to 0. As simple as that
Yes, then it
because
will be right.
right, because we are because xp is lying on the hyperplane, so we are putting it as 0. So here if you see we are not putting it as 0. So now what we will do is we will actually substitute the value of x0 which is given over here using this equation. So you can take x0 out from here and substitute the value of x0 from here to this side. So what you will get is this, just the manipulation. So what you are doing, you are writing x0 as xp plus beta times this. So what you are doing is you are putting it here. So this is the equation that you get here for g theta x0. So now we can expand it further. So what you get is, you move theta transpose inside. So what you get is this and this. So I am just keeping this term this side and I am bringing this term this side. So once you do that, this term, you know what is this value? This value is gxp because we have already calculated this here. So this is gxp plus beta times this thing. Please note that this is theta transpose theta, which is actually theta 2. So theta 2 and there is a theta this thing here. So by dividing the 2 you will get this. And this is 0. We have already calculated it. So if this is 0, we have already calculated it, then what we can get is beta out of here. And so beta will be g theta x0. Please note here we have x0 inside. G theta x0 divided by theta 2, the L2 of theta 2, L2 norm of theta 2. So what is this beta? This beta is the distance that we are actually looking here. This is beta. So this shows you that the distance of the nearest point x0, the distance of the point, not nearest, the distance of the point x0 from the plane and the orthogonal distance is beta, and that value will be calculated by putting the value of x0 into the hyperplane equation divided by the L2 of theta. Any question here regarding this derivation?
So previously we saw that this theta transpose is normal to this theta. So the product became 0. And now how is it like this is theta square or something?
Where is theta square? Where is theta
Well,
square?
so theta norm, like norm of theta is square.
Oh, this
You
one.
know,
This one is actually, these are all identities, from matrix. If you see, if you see theta transpose theta, that is always, theta, you take this thing, this is the way we write, this theta is basically nothing but, when you take something like this, let us say you take this is basically this one. And when you take something like this, it is theta 1 square plus theta 2 square plus theta 3 square. It's like this.
so, so not this one, sir. Like in the first theorem, previous theorem, theorem
Okay.
1,
Okay.
we proved that it is. Sir, can you go with that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, this is theta transpose times theta normal vector, which is 0.
Yes.
So, and if we wrote this theta transpose times this theta, but it was not how it is not 0. That's what I'm asking.
First of all, the thing is, this is theta transpose the vector which is connecting the hyperplane. You understand? This theta transpose is you are multiplying theta transpose by the vectors which are in the hyperplane. So that's why that theta transpose, the vector which is connected between the 2 points in the hyperplane is 0, and it's not theta transpose theta which is equal to 0. It's not 0 because this theta is not the vector which is connecting the points in the hyperplane. This is simply you are doing the theta transpose theta of itself. Here it is 0 because the vector which is connected in the hyperplane, when it multiplies with the theta transpose, gives you 0. That's why it's not like here. Okay. Understood or not?
So actually, what I'm thinking is the figure that you made, it had this XP, and we made a line which is perpendicular to the hyperplane, right?
Okay.
And then we scaled it by beta, and there was like another line which is parallel to this. So basically, these lines are parallel in this figure.
Yeah, it's a parallel. It's a parallel line to the normal vector, and it's scaled by a value of beta.
Yes, sir. So basically, if we it's not the same point, but we are considering this x0 and xp, but this xp is on the plane, right?
Yes.
And we are manipulating with that, like we are computing with this xp and x0 only.
Yes.
So since it's like on the plane only, so is it not like the thing that we are computing is somewhat similar to the previous one?
No, it's not the similar thing. It's like it's like the first thing was you are having 2 points here, and you wanted to see that if there is a vector which is connected between these 2 points, and then what you were deriving there was like we want to see that what is the normal vector to this plane. So when you connect a vector between the 2 points, so the normal vector which is coming out is this one, which is given over here. This is the first thing that we wanted to prove. And in the second thing, there is no extra point here, like there is no second point here. The only point that you have is xp as the vector. So there is no difference which you are taking between the 2 points here in the hyperplane. So there is no difference means you have only one absolute point xp, which is the projection of this point which is given over here onto this plane. And this projection, what we are saying is, it has to be it has to be in the same direction as that of this particular normal vector, so that you will get the shortest projection of this point onto the plane, because there are multiple such projections on the plane which are like this and this also. So the shortest one is this, and there is no such relation between the two things, like first is different and second is different, so do not confuse between the two derivations. Okay, so what is the closest point now? So we want to calculate this value of this closest point xp. So let's calculate this point xp which is on the hyperplane, and the value will be nothing but you can put xp which is given over here. You can use this xp, and you can move it to the right side and move this term to the left side and keep x0 here. So what value you will get is xp is equal to x0 minus beta times theta transpose. So it's just the manipulation of the first equation that we wrote. And once you have this, you have already calculated the value of beta. The value of beta that you have calculated is this. You just substitute that value, you will get this as the distance, and this is the direction of the normal vector. So this is the point xp on the plane, and the point xp's location will be given like this. So this is the distance of the point x0 to the plane, and this is the normal vector, and it's in this direction. So this is the closest point xp which lies on the plane. So what we will be doing is, we will be using these two theorems in understanding the derivation of the support vector machine. So so please note that this is the distance that we are actually focusing on. Why we are focusing on this distance? The reason for that is, what we have done is, this is the hyperplane, and we have multiple data sets, multiple points in the data set, and we now know that how to calculate the distance of these points, orthogonal distance of these points, yeah, or you can say the projection of these points onto this plane. We know how to calculate these values. So all these values are actually given by this equation. And the only difference that you have to do is, you have to calculate theta g theta x of I now divided by this, where x of I will be all the separate data points which are given over here. So you have to individually put these values into this equation and calculate the value. So this is the distance that we are actually targeting, and this is what is important in case of support vector machines, because this is actually the margin, because some way or the other these are the margins of these points from the plane, and we want to operate on this margin, so that we want to maximize this margin. This is what our objective is in case of support vector machines. So is it clear now? Like, if you have any questions here, let me know. Otherwise, we'll move forward, because these are the basics, fundamentals which are required to understand the support vector machines.
Sir, the first term is a scalar term. Second term is the vector term, right? So that's what I wanted to clear out.
Yeah. First is this one is the scaled quantity. It's a beta actually. You are scaling it in the direction of the vector.
Right, sir.
So this is the distance that we are always focusing on in support vector machines. So let's move forward and see what we can do further. So now I am introducing a concept of unsigned distance. So let's understand what this is. So we define a distance which is unsigned distance between the data point xj and the hyperplane hyperplane h, you can say, as this. As simple as that. What we are doing is we are taking the absolute value of the numerator. In earlier case we had this answer, right? So what we are taking is we are taking absolute value of this numerator, and what we are saying is this is the unsigned distance. So if I do this, then this value, if you substitute, this will not be p here. So once you substitute the value, it will be j here. So now if it is an unsigned distance, you take the absolute value of the hyperplane equation which is given over here. As simple as that. So this is the unsigned distance. So let's understand it more clearly, that what is this unsigned distance thing. So if you have a data set which is distributed like this, where this is the y is equal to -1 class, and this is the y equal to +1 class. So what I am doing is I am calculating the distance of each of these individual points from the hyperplane. And what are they? They are like this is the distance, this is the distance, this is the distance. All these are the distances of the point from the hyperplane which we are calculating, and these are all of them are the distances. So what we are doing is, these distances I am denoting it by d, xj, h, which is given over here. So one thing to note here is that the value of the, because this is the hyperplane here which is of value 0, because here you have w transpose x plus w0 equal to 0. So all the points here in this side are actually positive, and all the points here, if you measure in the terms of distance, it will be all negative values here on this side. So what happens is, if you want to calculate the distance of this point to this particular sample, it will be positive, and if you calculate the distance of this point from this sample, it will be negative. So once you take the unsigned distance, that means you are actually taking the absolute values of the positive and the negative. So if you take the absolute value of the positive or a negative value, it will always be positive. So the unsigned distance is calculated in this way. So if that is the thing, then what we define margin as? We define margin as minimum value of this unsigned distance. So whatever is the minimum value that is calculated, where j is actually the samples which are running from 1 to m. See, we are denoting m as the total number of samples in the data set. So what we are doing, we are actually calculating all these values, all these projection values. We are calculating all these values, and once we calculate all of them individually, then we say the margin is minimum of all of the values that we have calculated. So if that is the margin, then you can see that gamma, which is represented by margin, is represented in the form of gamma. Then gamma is this, as we denote it over here, and gamma is the minimum value of all the distances that you have calculated. So that is the gamma, the margin. And the important point to be noted about this gamma is that it is the function of theta and theta 0. Can anybody tell me like why I am writing this? Can anybody tell me why gamma is a function of theta and theta 0? First of all, let me know that the concept of gamma is clear or not. Any one of you? Concept of
Yes,
gamma
sir.
is okay. So can you tell me now this thing like why I am saying gamma is a function of theta and theta 0?
So because we are including the plane H there, right? Hyperplane H,
Okay,
which is
okay,
consisting of theta and theta naught.
okay, okay, right,
So
right, right.
that's why it's a function of theta and theta naught.
Right, right. Good. So actually, the thing is, gamma is a function of theta and theta naught because h is there. So this h plays an important role, and the thing is like this. If you have, if you tilt this h, because right now I have created this h in the optical sense, but if let us say your h is like this, if your h is like this, or if your h is, let me draw it like this, then obviously, your gamma will change. Your gamma will be this one now, which is the smallest one here. So this will be your gamma minimum because your H is changed. So based on based on this H orientation, your gamma will always change. So that is also important. And gamma will be greater than 0 normally. The value of the gamma is greater than 0. Why it is always greater than 0? Because you are actually taking the signed distance. You are taking signed value. You are taking absolute value. That's why it's always greater than 0, and its value will be 0 when your point lies on the boundary. So if your point lies here, there is no margin at all. So at that point, your gamma is 0. So these are the properties of gamma. That is the margin that we have, that we are defining. So can you tell me any disadvantage of using this signed distance, the one which we have proposed here? Like, any one of you can answer me this? Like, what is the disadvantage of this? Using the absolute value of the hyperplane thing, this thing.
We can't say that whether the point is belonging to negative side or positive side.
Then good, good, very good. So that is the main disadvantage of using signed distance. And the signed distance, the disadvantage is that this gamma which we are defining cannot tell whether the point is correctly classified or not. So the thing is like this. So let us discuss further, and I will show you this point in details in our coming slide. But for now, you can assume that unsigned distance, which we are actually calculating, which we are saying it as gamma, it will not tell you that whether the point is correctly classified or not. So let us move forward and see how we can clarify this. So what we do is we actually define a signed distance now. So we define a signed distance. Earlier we defined unsigned distance. So now we are defining a signed distance which is given by this. So it is nothing but what I am doing is I am attaching yj to the distance metric beta that we have evaluated. So if you recall, this is similar to the perceptron loss function that we were doing last time, which is L is equal to max, something like this. It is similar to that. So the same argument holds here also, that this particular thing is the prediction of the hypothesis function, and this is the actual label. So if your actual label and the hypothesis prediction are same, then obviously when you multiply the two together, your value will be greater than 0. And if the prediction of your hypothesis is different from the actual label, then obviously you are doing opposite, so your value will be less than 0. This we have discussed in details when we were discussing perceptron algorithm. So this is the same story which is going on here. So 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 this is on that same ground. So one thing to note here is, so this is what we just clarify. So any doubts here, like regarding this particular concept? Because this is already we have covered. Just a second, I'll connect my laptop to the power battery because it's draining. So just a minute. Okay, if you do not have any doubts related to this, then what we are calling this particular thing is the signed distance. So once you note here that this particular value we are calling it as signed distance because the values can go either greater than 0 or it can go less than 0 also. Whereas in case of unsigned distance, all the values were greater than 0. So in this figure, I am showing you 2 points, like one is the unsigned concept and another one is the signed concept. So here if you see, in case of unsigned distance, if your data is misclassified, so here you see we have a point which actually belongs to this, but it is misclassified and it's present here in case of y equal to -1 situation. So if you calculate the unsigned distance which is given by d here, you will notice that this value will be always greater than 0 and it's just a distance and it will always be positive. So you cannot characterize this point because you are taking unsigned value, and the value will be always greater than 0. So this point, even though it's a misclassified point, you cannot incorporate it in your framework. The second thing is, if you take a signed value, so in this situation what is happening? In this situation the thing that is happening is your value, that the value that is predicted by the hypothesis function will be less than 0. For this particular point your hypothesis function will produce less than 0, but the actual label of this is +1. So when you multiply the two together, your value will be negative. So this means in case of signed distance, your value will be less than 0. So what happens now is your signed distance is actually helping you to get two answers. First of all, it calculates the distance for you, plus also it helps us in deciding whether the point is in correct side or not. So it has two advantages here: calculating the distance you know as well as indicating that this point is not correctly classified. Whereas in this situation it's not like that. So any questions here regarding this thing? Okay, so if there are no questions, so this is signed and unsigned concept. So let's use all of the ideas that we have discussed till now to,
Sir,
yes,
uh, sir, I have a doubt. I
yeah,
mean, when we calculate sign distance,
okay,
it's like when we do the modulus of it, we get the unsigned
yes,
distance.
yes.
And what is the point of, calculating unsigned distance
That
when we are
one,
getting
yeah,
that?
yeah, that one I will show you once we start the derivation. So
Okay, sir.
it will be used there. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so these two things, if they are clear, so let's move forward and start the support vector machine thing. So this is the support vector machine.
There's just one more doubt.
Yeah.
If we take the absolute value of unsigned distance, then will it, signed distance, then will it be unsigned, or there will be some difference in the values?
That will again come out to be the unsigned one. No, 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 that will be different because the expression that we are defining here is
Yeah, yeah.
different. Yeah, it will not be the
Okay,
same. Yeah.
okay, sir.
Okay, so from this slide onwards, I will tell you one important thing. Normally, when you go to understand the support vector machines, what you will see is, straight away the books will write down the expression for support vector machine objective function, and it will tell that you do optimization on that, and then you will get the results. So I want to show you that how you will get that objective function, which is from where the books starts. So that is the difference from from my from using my approach as compared to the books approach. So that will be the difference here. So we will go step by step and we will reach to the point where books starts their discussion. So let us derive this optimization framework from scratch, so that you will get to know how people are getting to that objective function from where they start working out. So so the max margin objective, so this is our objective, right? We started our objective by so that we can maximize the margin. That is our main objective. So in order to achieve this, the very first assumption that we make, which is very important in case of support vector machines also, is that we assume our data set is linearly separable. It's very important. We assume our data set has to be linearly separable. We are not dealing with we are not dealing with this data which is not separate, which is non-linearly scattered around. We are not discussing this type of situation where this type of problem happens, where your where your this particular point is, or you have some data points here also of this class. So we will deal with this point later on when we will understand the advanced versions of this, but right now we are assuming that our data points are linearly separable, and they can be separated by a simple line. And I hope you understand this concept, that the data sets, if they can be separated by a single straight line, then we are actually saying it's a linearly separable situation. We are not dealing with non-linear boundaries here. So this is our first assumption. So what it means is, if your data is linearly separable by the line, then you can calculate all the distances, this signed distances for all the points. You can see here we have j here. So this j is running for all the points from 1 to m. So if the points are all linearly separable like this, which I am showing you here, like you have one cluster here, another one cluster is this side. So if these points are linearly separable, means you can actually fit a straight line to separate the two. So if you can do that, if you are actually dealing with this type of data set, here what you can do is you can individually calculate the signed distance for all these points individually, right? You can easily do that. And what we are doing is we are calculating it using this equation which is given over here. So all these points j corresponds to the signed distance for all these points in the data set. And what we are saying is, we are saying that all these points are actually greater than gamma. What is gamma? We have already defined it. Gamma is the unsigned distance that we have calculated earlier. So what we are saying? We are saying that all these points, or all this thing that we are doing, is it's like a condition. It's like a condition which ensures that all the data are correctly classified, because you have this gamma right here, right? So what we are doing is we are actually if you see this, if the data is correctly classified, then what is the situation? That the hypothesis function that you generate will have the same symbol as that of this yi. So if that is true, then the only situation in which the this signed distance will be greater than 0 will be when all the points are correctly classified. So if all the points are correctly classified, then we are saying that it is at least greater than some margin which is gamma. So by writing this condition, we are actually ensuring that all the data are correctly classified. Any doubts here related to this condition? If it is there, let me know. Otherwise, we will move forward in understanding this. Yes.
Sir, I just wanted to ask one thing.
Yeah.
So, like, after knowing the signed concept of the distance, like, would not like the gamma value would be like the minimum of the positive value of the signed distance?
Yeah, it's somewhere. See, the thing is, this signed and unsigned thing is taking care. This particular thing which is given over here, this thing is actually taking care of all the classification and all the outliers thing, like as we discussed. It is taking care of that. The points are going there or here, so it incorporates all that information in this. But this one is independent of all that information, and we want that gamma, which is the minimum value of all that, at least this particular thing should be greater than this gamma.
Okay.
So that the problem of this type of situation should not occur. That is this one. That this point, the purple point which is here, should not come. So if I am writing this condition, means this situation will not come at all, because here when you have this point, this particular thing will become less than 0, because it's a signed distance. And if this is becoming less than 0, and your gamma is the absolute value, so this condition is violated. The one which I am writing here, it is violated, so we are not dealing with that situation. So we are
Okay,
saying
okay.
this condition to correctly classify the things.
Yes, I understood.
So, so, so what we are saying is that all the training samples are correctly classified if we impose this condition. And the second thing is all the samples are at least gamma from the boundary. So this ultimately will tell you that if this correct classification is happening and we are saying that it's all greater than gamma, that means there is a boundary of gamma after which these samples are starting, because the distance, the signed distance is greater than this gamma. So this is the thing which is stated here. So now the story comes. Now this is our main objective thing that we want to. This is basically the a condition that we are actually imposing. So now the main thing comes. Now what we want is maximize the margin, which is the ultimate goal of support vector machine. So if this is the ultimate goal, so what we are doing, we are maximizing gamma. So you know this gamma we have already calculated using unsigned distance. So we want to maximize this gamma, which we are actually, this is the first aim that from where we started out. Subject to, please note, we are actually putting a subject to condition. So this subject to is a condition that we are imposing while doing this maximization strategy. And what is that condition? The condition is this. This we have already discussed in the earlier slide. And what it ensures? It ensures that all the data points are correctly classified. Correctly classified. So it's a guarantee that all the data points are correctly classified. So this is the condition that we have to meet along with the maximization of the gamma that we have to do. So it's called as the constraint optimization problem in support vector machines. So what is constraint optimization problem? Constraint optimization problem means you are actually having an objective function which is here, which you are trying to maximize, but you cannot maximize it to any extent. You have to maximize it based on the condition that this is met. So this is the condition that you have to meet simultaneously in order to maximize this gamma. So any doubts here regarding this? So you will never find this type of equation in books, because they straight away write the final formulation, which we will get to in after 2-3 minutes. But this is the actual story from where it starts. So if you see here, I have plotted these three plots here, and if you see that this particular support vector machine result which we are getting here is the best result, and it's a good result because every data point that you have is actually having distance which is at least greater than the gamma. And here also all the data points are having distance which is at least greater than the value of gamma. So this is the ideal situation, and it's a good support vector machine result which this particular hypothesis function is generating. Whereas this situation is not the good one, because this is the same data set, but your hypothesis function is shifted to this side. Earlier it was this side, so now it is shifted to this side. So now you can see here the gamma thing is not maximized, because here the gamma is not maximized, it's a minimum. So this is not the correct version. And here if you see this side, it's also not the correct version, because your hypothesis function here is shifted to this side, and this side is having more margin and this side it's having less margin. So it's also not the correct option for the support vector machine. So now we recall back our problem of optimization of support vector machine, which we have written over here again. So note here we have some problems here. We cannot solve this optimization problem straight away because it has some problems. And what are that problems? That is, this particular optimization problem is not easy to solve, and the reason for that is, your gamma, as I told you, your gamma is actually a function of theta and theta 0 here, as we discussed also, that gamma is a function of theta and theta 0. So this gamma, if you want to maximize this theta and theta 0, which you want to get the value of using this gamma, so it is coming here also, it is coming in the denominator of this object of this constraint also, and it is coming here also. So it's a very difficult situation to solve this, because it's very difficult for the optimization frameworks to solve this particular problem, because the thetas and the theta zeros that you want to solve for are appearing in the denominator of this constraint set, and even here also. So if you change this, if you maximize this, this will also change. That is the problem, and this will also change. So we want to manipulate this optimization equation, so that if you vary this, then the fluctuations here should be minimum. Like in the denominator it should not fluctuate, here also it should not fluctuate, but right now when you maximize gamma, this is also changing. So we want to come up with the manipulation of this optimization framework, so that we can avoid these situations. So in order to do that, we are actually want to convert it into the better optimization problem, which we can solve properly. So the first thing that we will do is scaling. We will scale this problem. This is the first thing. So what we will do is, in that scaling process, we have these three steps. The first step is that let xm be the closest point to the boundary. Let xm be the closest point to the boundary. Then I am writing gamma tilde as this thing. So I am writing gamma tilde as this thing. It's an unsigned distance that we have already calculated earlier. We are taking the absolute value. So I am writing it like this. So gamma, we are defining it as unsigned distance. So I am just replacing this particular value on the top by this. Just the substitution, it's nothing more than that. So once we have this, which is actually gamma represented in this format, then we will proceed further. So one thing to note here is, right now I am saying that xm be the closest point to the boundary, but I am not calculating the boundary right now. We are trying to find the boundary, and then why I am saying that xm is the closest point to the boundary. See, what I am saying is, we have this and we are actually looking for a boundary. Right now this boundary is not there at all, but still we are saying that xm be the closest point to the boundary. So the point that to be noted here is that this thing will be clear once we go and see the optimization framework, where we will see that this gamma will completely go away. This is the gamma which is the boundary thing, which is the main thing. This is the gamma which defines the boundary. So we will see that how this will this point will be cleared. We will come back to this point, but to start the discussion, you assume that xm be the closest point to the boundary. So the unsigned distance will be this, and you write xm here, because that is the closest point. So in order to change the optimization framework which is given over here, we do this type of substitution, which you can see here. The only thing is the change in the colors, which are the new variables. So as you know, I am writing gamma as this. So what I am doing, I am substituting this gamma with this, as simple as that, and I am substituting this gamma as this, as simple as that. So now you can see that in the denominator we have this L2 norm of theta. It goes away, it cancels out because of this substitution that we have done. So once this is done, then the new framework that comes up is this. This is the new framework. And if you see here, the only difference is that the denominator value is cancelled. So this is our new framework here. So now we want to move one more step again, and then what we do is we eliminate this gamma tilde. We eliminate this gamma, and what we do is we do this type of substitution, as you can see in the blue highlights. So what we are doing is we are dividing the values of theta and theta 0 by gamma tilde, and you can see this is the modified objective function that you have here, along with the constraint objective function which is given over here. So you divided it by gamma tilde. Now if you rewrite this theta divided by gamma tilde and theta 0 divided by gamma tilde as theta and theta 0, because it's just the scaling factor that is there, it's scaled, it's a normal scaling, so you can do the variable substitution by replacing this theta by gamma tilde by theta and theta 0 by gamma tilde by theta 0. Then what you can do is you can again rewrite this particular equation here, this particular objective function like this. So you can see now your 1 is here now. Earlier it was gamma, and there in the denominator you had something like theta 2, it is also gone, and this theta 2 which was in the numerator, which was in the denominator, is actually now at this point in the objective function. So now this is the actual support vector machine cost function, or you can say the objective function that we want to minimize. So this is in the proper format. This is in the proper format of proper format of support vector machine problem, which we will discuss in our next lecture. So if you have any questions here regarding all these things, let me know. So if it is clear to all of you, then in the next class we will go further and understand support vector machines in more details. So this is the point from where the book starts. From here actually I will go further in the next class, and then I will show you that how they wrote this separately in a different format in which you will find the expressions in the books. So if you have no questions here, then we can close this class and we'll meet in the next class.